welcome to Watch Symposium. I'm Austin. All right, the 2021 Rolex Explorer 2, it was released, and I was surprised at how unsurprising it was. I mean, there were a litany of predictions and expectations, everything from a green GV sapphire crystal that would have come from the discontinued Milgauss. That didn't happen, and I'm glad. I don't think the Explorer 2 needs the Milgauss's sloppy seconds. Of course, the ceramic bezel didn't happen. That was probably the biggest surprise. And no green accents of any sort. No green text on the dial. No green 24-hour hand. No green dial. Some people thought there was going to be a green dial like the Hulk. Again, glad there wasn't. There was no sort of green color indicating the 50th anniversary, and it doesn't look like Rolex really acknowledged the 50th anniversary, except for the fact that they just updated the movement. Yeah, there's subtle visual changes. I mean, a crown between the Swiss made and, of course, the more prominent visual change on the black dial version. We'll talk about that. But they seem to have ignored the fact that it was the 50th anniversary. Well, at least showing it. And, I have to wonder if they listened to everybody's prediction, just made a big list, and then thought, here's the surprise. It's going to be none of that. Now, if you guys remember the teaser, it certainly seems like Rolex was either trolling us or maybe just joking with us in a friendly way and messing with our expectations. And in the future, if you think you're going to get clever and get a screen capture and enhance it or lighten it and try to get the drop on Rolex, it ain't going to happen, all right? I think they probably planned that out and very likely expected that we would do that and come to these erroneous conclusions. Did they expect that there would be disappointment? I don't know about that. And is there disappointment? Well, I guess it depends on if you like the steel bezel or if you thought it would have been better on a ceramic bezel. Now, the steel bezel works better for the intended purpose, but then the other side of that argument is nobody's caving with these watches anymore. And so does there really need to be a steel bezel on it? I think a lot of the disappointment comes from the lack of any visual change. I mean, we like new things. They're exciting. When there's no visual change, it's not very exciting. And so basically, there's a certain visual, and then it visually changes and it's upgraded. Here, there was no visual change. It was just pretty much upgraded. So not a lot to talk about. Now, of course, there was a slight visual change in the black dial version. The shadow hands are gone, and you've got the silver hands, and then the 24-hour hand is just like the hand on the white version, meaning it's all orange. Now, why did they do that? In my opinion, it's a real simple explanation. It's just easier. Just putting black paint on a little bit of those silver hands probably was a little harder. And now the 24-hour hand can be interchanged with the white version. So when you're sending out parts, you don't have to differentiate between the two different kinds. So I think that's really the reason. Now, does that make the previous black dial version special? I guess it depends on if you like the shadow hands. Now, while on the same kind of subject as that, let's talk about who got screwed. Anybody that went out speculating, picking up a 42mm 216570, looking to hold on to it and flip it for a profit right after this new ceramic version dropped, are probably hating life today. It just goes to why you really shouldn't speculate on a watch that you don't like. I mean, did I think about getting a 42mm Explorer 2 before this release? Yeah, for like a split second. And then I thought, do I like the watch? Not really, so why? Now I'll tell you, I did think about getting a 40mm Swiss only white dial 16570. But I thought, do you really want to speculate? Do you need to double up? No, all right? And even if this had come out, I probably would have been stuck with that watch. It would have gone up a little bit, but what would I have done? Sold it? Not really. I would have said, well, it went up a little bit. Is it going to go up a little bit more? I better keep it. And then I'd have two white dial Explorer 2s. Would have been crazy, so I decided not to do it. But anybody who went out and bought the 42mm, well, any Explorer 2, thinking that they were going to flip it for a quick profit, again, didn't work out. So I hope everybody that did that likes the watch and is looking forward to wearing it, because prices on the gray market, the pre-owned market, might have gone up a tad right before the release. If you had bought then, I think they might come down a little bit, because what would you rather have? Would you rather have the older version or the newer version? Now, really it comes down to the movement, and there's a big argument that the 31 movements are a little bit better than the 32 movements. I'll try to find an article from a watchmaker as to comparing those two movements, and by a slim margin, the 31 movements came out on top. But that's his opinion, and you get a greater power reserve, and I'm sure that there are advantages to the newer movement. And look, on paper, newer is always better. So putting that debate aside as to which movement is better, we can just say that most people are going to want the newer movement, right? And so this spells trouble for prices of the older 42 millimeter Explorer, because again, most people are going to want the newer version. And so I think the 42 millimeter is probably going to, and I'm talking about the 216570, the old one, the old 42 millimeter Explorer 2. I think those are going to become very competitively priced. That's going to turn into the watch that you can get into cheap if you want to steal professional Rolex with a lot of functions. Now, of course, it doesn't make that a bad watch or an obsolete watch, but people like newer things. And wouldn't you rather have, all things being equal, the newer version with the newer movement, again, assuming it's better? And I think there's some upgrades with the bracelet, perhaps. So there are advantages, and there's no visual difference. And that's the whole thing. I mean, if you were thinking about going for example, a 116710 LN or a modern BLNR, well, the movement difference is just a small factor. They're the visual differences, and that's huge. I mean, you got the monocolored bezel versus the bicolored bezel, and the green 24-hour hand versus the blue 24-hour hand. You got none of that now. There's really no distinctive visual difference except for that small crown at the 6, right? That nobody's even going to notice. And so it really takes the wind out of the sails of the previous older 42 millimeter Explorer. Still a great watch, but I think they're going to stagnate in price. Now, what about the 40 millimeter Explorer 2? Well, they're not making those anymore, so I think you're going to see those continue to rise. Now, are the 42 millimeter older shadow hand black dialed Explorer 2s going to shoot up in price? I don't think so, and here's why. Because I think the newer version looks better. I think people are going to like that more. Now, there's always going to be a subset of people that like the older version more and are going to, again, speculate, but it's not a big visual difference. When you think about the Mark I 39 millimeter Explorer, it had shorter hands and the white gold 369 on the dial. Some people like that more. Now, those never shot up. A lot of people speculated on those and are still speculating, and maybe those will go up in the future. I'm not sure, but there was no real difference between those, and that's the one on the left you're looking at, and the newer one on the right. And I think we're going to see that with the black shadow hands. I think the improvement in clasp and bracelet and movement are going to much outweigh that small visual difference. And again, I think many of us think it's a little bit better in the newer incarnation. So if you have one of those watches, that's good. Well, it's better than having the older 42 millimeter white dial, because there's no real difference there. But look, great watches to have, and anybody that has one of those watches should have it because it's a good watch and they bought it because they liked it. But if you're sitting with it on your wrist because you thought, well, it's going to go up and I'll wear it for a few months and flip it again, it didn't work out, all right? And it just goes to the lesson of speculating is okay, but don't buy on speculation. Buy because you like a watch. A good way to look at it is Do you want the watch? Would you buy it if it were to go down? If the answer is yes, get it. And if you think also it might not go down, it might go up, well, that's all the more reason for you to pull the trigger. Now we can talk about what Rolex should have done. Should they have reverted to the older style of bezel insert, like the 1655? In my opinion, no, because you've already got that 24-hour hand that's a throwback to that. If they had done that, it would be like it's gradually returning. And I much rather see, instead of a gradual return to a 1655, a jump, a dial like a 1655 and the 1655 bezel, and a return to 40 millimeters. Now, before, a couple of days ago, I would have said, good luck, that's never going to happen. But one of the biggest and most interesting things, and I think a lot of people have been downplaying it, is the return to the 36 millimeter Explorer. I mean, not just the size, but the dial. I mean, the Explorer position is back up at the top, and Rolex really can go backwards, and that's what they've told us. And it opens up a lot of possibilities for the future. Now, the Explorer 2 wasn't updated visually this time, but I think in 10 years or however long it's going to take, I think we can definitely expect something different. They're not going to come out with a third version exactly the same. So the question is, how are they going to change it in 10 or 20 years? It's going to take a while. A lot of us probably won't be around then, but it's going to happen eventually. And the whole point of this reversal back to the 36 millimeter Explorer is that they can revisit the past. And if you've ever hoped for a 1655, it's possible. All right, Rolex has demonstrated it is possible. If you've ever dreamed of a return to the pre-ceramics, it's actually possible. Now, do I think that'll ever happen in our lifetime? No, I think everyone walking the earth will be gone before we see a return to the pre-ceramic GMTs, but it could happen. And people not even born yet could grow up and say, you know, I've always liked those 5-digit GMTs, but I don't want to pay $100,000 for one anymore, and getting parts for them is tough. I work at Rolex now. Everybody on the board is game, and let's do it. And I hope they look back to 2021 and think, we did go back to our past and we can do it again. And so I think that's a huge thing that Rolex did this, because again, it opens up possibilities for them revisiting things that we never thought they would. If you live by the tenet, Rolex only goes forward. Well, Rolex in the end surprised us this year by not surprising us, by them communicating that we can revisit the past. Will the Explorer 2 ever come on a ceramic bezel? Well, I don't think so. I think the metal bezel is the identity of that watch. And I think in 2021, Rolex's teaser was them saying, I know you want it, I know you think it's going to happen, but it's not part of what that watch is. And really, if you think about it, it's not. I mean, that's a metal bezeled watch. And so never say never when it comes to Rolex, but I don't think perhaps we'll ever see a ceramic bezel on the Explorer 2, and I think that's a good thing. And as far as the visual differences to come in the decades with the Explorer 2, well, if the Explorer showed us anything, it's that a 1655 is possible, and that's pretty cool. Let me know what you think. Take care. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.